I've actually been looking forward to doing this for quite some time. I've spent about 20 years in this corporate world. I've worked as a strategist at Deloitte. And maybe more than anything, I have always been curious about this one thing in particular. Why do some businesses thrive while others collapse? Can we decode success or failure by studying those who've gone before us? That's exactly what this channel is honestly trying to do in different ways. And today we're diving into one of the most fascinating turnaround stories in South African mining. A company that's literally risen from the ashes of a district that went silent for decades. So in about 2024, for the first time in 42 years, the sound of underground blasting echoed through the northern capes of Cape Copper District. This was not just any mine restart. This was the resurrection of South Africa's oldest mining region, driven by a visionary entrepreneur and a metal that's honestly become absolutely critical to our electrified future. The question that still lingers is this: can Copper360 transform from a struggling startup losing 99 million rands a year into Africa's next copper giant? It's perhaps the best way to start this story is to go back in time. Let me take you back to 1685. Yes, 1685, when Commander Simon van der Stel sank 3 trial shafts in what will later become South Africa's first mining district. But here's the twist: the indigenous Khoisan tribes had been mining copper there long before any European ever set foot on African soil. Fast forward to about 1852, and the All Cape district became the first officially proclaimed mining district in Southern Africa. And by about 1860, was really the Cape Colony's second most important export after war. This place was absolutely booming. At one point, it housed the world's largest copper mine, but then came the crashes, inevitably. Mining, as we know, is a cyclical business, and copper prices are notoriously volatile. By around 2005, after decades and decades of ups and downs, every single mine in the district had fallen silent. The infrastructure rusted, the communities struggled, and it seemed like the Northern Cape's copper story was indeed over. Enter Miss Shirley Hayes. And this is really where our story gets interesting. Born in Springbok, right in the heart of this copper district, Shirley became one of the first women in South Africa to qualify for a blasting certificate. Maybe think about that for a moment. In a male-dominated industry, she literally fought her way to the front lines. For about 15 years, from 2008 onwards, Shirley methodically pieced together what everyone else had abandoned. Through her company, HIP Copper, I'll sort of call it Ship Copper for simplicity, she consolidated mining rights across 19,000 hectares. That's right. That's about 70% of the entire Northern Cape's copper belt. She was not just buying land, she was buying a vision that copper prices would rise again and that modern society definitely could not survive without this critical mineral. Maybe here's the business lesson from so far that we've pieced together. While others saw abandonment, Shirley saw opportunity. She understood something fundamental about commodities. They are cyclical. What goes down eventually comes back up, especially when you're dealing with a metal that's essential for the energy transition. And I mean, in 2025, there is no bigger opportunity than these metals that are well poised to support the energy transition. So in about 2022, persistence finally paid off. After years of exploration and development, it was granted a full mining right, but Shirley knew that she needed a bit more than just a mining right. She needed operational expertise and capital. That's where Jan Nelson entered the picture. So Jan is a geologist with about 20 years of experience. He had managed to build Pan-African Resources from really a small market cap of less than 250 million into a 5 billion rand company with over, give or take, about 5,000 employees. So he's a guy who has a good idea of what it takes to build a mining company. He brought the operational know-how that Shirley's vision needed. In November 2022, they executed a reverse takeover. It acquired Big Tree Copper, which had been producing small amounts of copper cathode by processing historical waste dumps. the combined entity became Copper360, the company that we're focusing on today. And in about April 2023, they listed on the JSE's AltX exchange, raising 250 million in the process. But maybe here's where the story takes another dramatic turn. In May this year, 2025, company brought out of retirement Graham Briggs to be the new CEO. Graham is well known in the sector. He's a mining industry heavyweight who had previously run Harmony Gold through some of the toughest periods in South African mining history. Mr. Briggs spent 7 years as Harmony CEO from 2008 to 2015, navigating global financial crises and operational challenges. So he's one leader who's proven he has done it. Now the question is, can he do the same at Copper360? And given that he's coming out of retirement, I personally find that quite interesting. And maybe the leadership lesson here with the appointment of Graham is this: successful turnarounds require different skills at different stages. And maybe Shirley, who has always had this vision and persistence to consolidate the assets, understands this deeply. Jan had the operational expertise to get the production process started. What Graham brings is the executive experience to scale the business into a major producer. So that then maybe brings us to where we are at the moment. So we're recording this in September 2025. Let's talk numbers because they tell a remarkable story of transformation. In 2024, Copper360 generated 38.2 million rands in revenue, which was about a 15% increase from the previous year. No small feat. But here's what makes this impressive. They achieved this despite only operating for about 9 months. They lost 3 months due to a plant shutdown for major upgrades. Right now, the company is currently operating 3 facilities. One is a solvent extraction or electrowinning plant that produces copper cathode, and 2 modular flotation plants that produce copper concentrate. Think of it this way. They are essentially running both a refinery and a concentrator, which gives them flexibility in how they sell their copper. But 2024 was really about building the foundation for hopefully massive growth. They invested 322 million rands in capital expenditure, including 131 million to acquire the Nama copper plant. 31 million rands went to the crushing facility, and about 26 million was spent on a generator farm to deal with South Africa's infamous load shedding. And maybe here's where it gets exciting. In August 2024, Copper360 restarted underground mining at the Rietberg mine, the first underground copper production in the Cape district in over 40 years. This is not just symbolic, it's transformational. The Rietberg mine has measured and indicated resources of up to 5 million tons at a grade of 1.27% copper. And it contains about 60,800 tons of the copper metal. That is quite significant. The current leadership team reflects these growth trajectories. Graham brings gold-standard mining experience. No one can dispute that Graham is an exceptional CEO. Gordon Thompson, the new COO, has about 30 years of international mining experience across Western Australia, West Africa, and Southern Africa. So the technical team is solid, and it includes metallurgists and geos who understand the unique characteristics of Northern Cape's copper deposits. But I don't know, maybe let's be honest about the challenges that Copper360 will face. So far, the company has posted an operating loss of 129 million rands in 2024. This was, of course, not unexpected. They are in the classic mining development phase, where you're spending heavily on infrastructure before production ramps up. Load shedding alone cost them about 48 tons of copper production, and that's quite significant. The management lesson here is about timing and capital allocation. Mining companies often fail because they run out of money before production reaches profitable levels. And Copper360 has secured a 650 million rand equity facility precisely to avoid these traps. Well done to Shirley and team. Currently, the company is producing about, say, 100 to 120 tons of copper per month from their cathode operation, with concentrate production adding another layer. But these are just the warm-up numbers. The real story is what's coming next. So let's maybe talk a bit about strategy and Copper360's future prospects, because this is really where Copper360 strategy gets fascinating, because they are not just restarting old mines, they're reimagining how copper mining works in the modern era. Their core strategy is what they call the cluster mining model. Instead of operating one massive mine, they're developing multiple smaller mines within a 30-kilometer radius, all feeding into centralized processing facilities. Think of it as a hub-and-spoke system. It's got a lower environmental impact, it's got operational flexibility, and it has the ability to blend different ore grades for optimal processing, at least all of this in theory. The numbers do indeed tell the growth story. They're targeting between 6.5 and 10,000 tons of copper production in 2025, scaling to 20,000 in 26 and 50,000 tons by 2027. And maybe to put that in perspective, 50,000 tons will make them a significant mid-tier copper producer, driven by global standards. But here's the bull case. They're perfectly positioned for the global copper super cycle. Global copper demand is expected to grow 70% by 2050. That is quite significant. And this is driven by the energy transition, as we touched on before. Electric vehicles use 3 to 4 times more copper than regular cars. Wind turbines are copper intensive. Copper360's location in the Northern Cape in South Africa provides an advantage that is significant. They are in a relatively politically stable jurisdiction with established mining infrastructure and a skilled workforce. Maybe compare that to other copper projects in the DRC or other unstable regions, and the risk-adjusted returns start to look very compelling. So we spoke about the bull case. There's always the flip side, the bear case. So let's touch a bit on that. There's always an execution risk when it comes to mining project. And in that case, the execution risk is enormous. Mining is notoriously difficult to scale. Copper prices are volatile, and South Africa has infrastructure challenges, ranging from, suppose power supply is really the primary one. Yes, the country has had a good year, but we know that sort of remains unstable and unpredictable. The company's debt to equity ratio, it's about 97%, shows that they are highly leveraged. So if copper prices decline or production targets are missed, they could find themselves in a really bad financial situation. There's also competition. The DR Congo increased copper production by 12.6% last year. That's 2024, reaching about 3.3 million tons of copper. Zambia is also targeting 3 million tons annually by about 2031. So Copper360 will be competing against much larger and more established producers. The execution strategy is also, at least so far from what we've seen, it seems methodical. Phase 1 focuses on ramping existing operations to 12,000 tons annually. Phase 2 involves opening additional mines in their cluster model. The third phase is about downstream beneficiation, potentially producing copper wire and piping rather than just concentrate. I'm pretty sure our politicians will love that. The economy, the South African economy, will benefit greatly if they were to achieve those objectives. So what can we really learn from Copper360's journey so far? And I know that it's really early days, so no one really knows how this will unfold. But so far, Copper360's journey from an abandoned mining district to a potential copper giant, there are a few lessons. And from my perspective, the first lesson is this: vision beats consensus. So when everyone else saw worthless abandoned mines, Shirley Hayes saw the future of electrification. Sometimes the best opportunities exist where others fear to tread. The second lesson is execution requires different skills at different stages. Shirley's entrepreneurial vision got the assets. Jan came in and his operational expertise got production started. Now Graham brings executive experience and presence, and he's really been brought in to scale the business. So the lesson, know when to bring in different types of leaders. The third lesson is timing matters. I remember many years ago, say 2025, years ago. I attended a conference in Cape Town. It was a critical minerals conference. And in that conference, the thing that struck me was the number of Chinese delegates. And I'm mentioning this because fast forward 25 years later, China is now the undisputed leader in the supply of critical minerals. But maybe let's come back to Copper360. And then the third lesson we can derive from their story. Timing absolutely matters, but preparation maybe matters even more. The copper supercycle is real, but Copper360 spent about 15 years preparing for this moment. They didn't just get lucky, they positioned themselves to capture the opportunity. That then brings us to the fourth lesson, and this is around capital allocation. How you allocate your capital in mining is everything. They have secured sufficient funding to reach cash flow positive operations. Too many mining companies fail because they run out of money before reaching sustainable production. The ultimate question, I guess, is this: can they execute? Graham, Shirley, can you execute? The assets are there, the market opportunity is huge, and the leadership team has the right experience. But mining, as we know, is hard, and scaling is even harder. So what do you think? Is Copper360 the resurrection story that South African mining needs? Or is it another case of commodity optimism outrunning operational reality?